Is the board also not hearing this?
No. The proposition webinar.
Okay, we'll do that during general public comment, and then I will clarify.
Just we're at 2 letters. Just keep on with number 3 and 4. So you can see down here letter. This is the.
And so, and this is on the budget just because it's from a different organization. So we'll do that for each of them.
For this that's the $15 million.
This is a different item, so this will be general public comment. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for clarifying that. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is, we have name tags and a gavel. All right. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 meeting of the East Bay Community Energy Community Advisory Committee. This meeting is taking place in person and also by members attending remotely in locations that have been properly noticed. Can we please take roll call and establish quorum?
Absolutely, thank you. Cynthia Lander.
Present.
Member Hughes.
Present.
Member Liu.
Present.
Member Swaminathan.
Yeah.
Member Locksley.
I'm here.
Member Talria. Member Checker.
Present.
Member Souza. Member Lutz. Member Hernandez. Chair Eldred.
Here, but I have a question. We only have 2 locations that have been noticed, 3602 Thornton Avenue in Fremont and Starbucks in Castro Valley. Are all 3 of our members participating online at one of those 2 locations?
Yes, I am in Fremont location.
And
4563 Maya Park Circle, that was one of the addresses, correct?
Member Liu, I think, I might have. Hold on 1 second. I might have not put it down on the agenda.
Member Lou, the location that you're at, has the agenda been posted publicly for the last 3 days, and is it accessible by members of the public now?
Yes, I'm calling from Starbucks.
You're calling from Starbucks. All right, that one.
Yeah, the location, I think it's Rusty Drive or something in Castro Valley.
Got it. That's perfect. And then member Swaminathan, the location that you're at, is it accessible to members of the public, and have you had an agenda publicly posted visible for the last 72 hours?
Yes, outside my home.
Outside your home. Okay. Good for you. And did you receive notification that that would be happening and it was an error that can be corrected on the?
I think so. Hold on. Yes, I have that address on the agenda, I believe.
I only see 2 on my version. Perhaps the one we have is outdated. All right. Thank you for those for all of you who took the time to post these correctly. We'll make sure to get our agenda updated. We have quorum. That's great. We love having quorum. All right. So the next item that we're going to go to is public comment. And as a reminder, this item is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any EBCE related matters that are not on this meeting agenda. Public comment on any items that we do have on the agenda will be heard at that time. Every item will have public comment. If there are members of the public who wish to speak on this item, would you just speak in general for the comment?
I'm here to get a lay of the land of
Great.
East Bay Community Energy, customer in Oakland.
Perfect.
And I also am interested in finding out who to speak to about certain things.
Excellent. So if you wish to make a comment during public comment, we have a speaker slip right there. You can just raise your hand though, and I'll call on you.
Okay, great.
But if there's any questions that come up during the meeting, then you can just, like on the agenda items, just let me know and we'll call on you for that. Okay, great. So I do understand that we've received several written public comments, and are there any members of the public with their hand raised virtually?
There are no members of the public with their hands raised at this time.
Okay, great. Can you please read, we'll go 3 minutes. We have a packed agenda, so we'll see how long that lasts. Can you please read those comments for 3 minutes into the agenda?
Okay, so the first letter is from Tom Kelly, dated June 21st, 2023. I'm going to 3 minutes on the screen. Tom Kelly writes, "Dear members of the East Bay Community Energy Board of Directors and Community Advisory Committee, over the past few years, I have consistently advocated for an improvement in power content of EBCE's default product, Bright Choice. For many of us, clean, carbon-free electricity was the primary reason for pressing for the development of a local community choice program. Evidence of those efforts can be found in EBCE's formation documents, which clearly and repeatedly state that EBCE will do better than PG&E on greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, the enabling legislation signed by the city of Stockton states that by joining EBCE, Stockton will reduce its greenhouse gas emissions from electricity. The joint powers agreement signed by Stockton states that EBCE will provide electricity with lower greenhouse gas intensity than PG&E. Based on EBCE's plan for making Bright Choice carbon-free by 2030, neither of the promises made by Stockton to its constituents nor by EBCE to its member jurisdictions are true. As an advocate, I try to understand the reasons for why my efforts do not always succeed. Am I wrong? Is my reasoning faulty? Is there something that I'm missing? Until recently, I thought that the drive by EBCE to maximize its reserves, and in doing so, improve its credit rating, could be the underlying reason why EBCE kept purchasing carbon-intensive electricity. But today, I'm wondering if the real reason is simply that EBCE management lacks the experience and qualifications to adequately manage what will soon become a billion-dollar corporation. Over the past year or so, we have seen a number of very costly actions by EBCE management that have affected the reputation of the agency and deprived ratepayers of cleaner, cheaper electricity and enhanced local programs. I estimate those financial losses to ratepayers at more than $20 million. The cost of the loss of credibility and confidence in EBCE management cannot be adequately calculated. These costly actions include A, the repeated failure of EBCE to meet its resource adequacy obligations. The CPUC has assessed EBCE $6.3 million in penalties since in February 2019 for its failure to meet its RA obligations. Surprisingly, EBCE management seems to think that it was simply, quote, gaming the system by paying the fines rather than acquiring the RA. CEO Nick Chassid made a comment to that effect at the May 15, 2023 Community Advisory Committee meeting, namely, quote, EBCE customers were better off, quote, by paying the penalties rather than acquiring the resource adequacy. Mr. Chassid claimed that EBCE was unable to acquire RA during the periods covered by the penalties, 4 years, in spite of the fact that the CCAs were able to do so, with the exception of Central Coast Community Energy. Marie Fontenot, EBCE's Vice President of Power Resources, responded to the letter from Sierra Club that raised its concerns about RA issues.
your time, and clarification, just by some points brought up in that letter, the point about the inability to procure resource adequacy was addressed in publicly prior to the decision being made. It was heard at the finance committee and it was brought before this committee. So just to clarify that point, and the other point to clarify there would be that the cost of the fine was lower than the cost of the procurement, but they were still trying to do the procurement. They were just not able to, as there was not sufficient RA to purchase. So we'll just clarify that on behalf of our CEO as it was addressed at our last meeting. There's another public comment.
Yes. Okay, the 3 minutes. Our next public comment is from Jim Lutz, who writes, this letter is dated June 8th, 2023. Dear EBCE Board, I am submitting this comment in response to the EBCE 2023-2024 proposed value proposition webinar I attended on June 6th. The rate change proposed by staff were to increase the Bright Choice discount relative to PG&E rates from 3% to 5%, and to reduce the renewable 100 premium relative to PG&E rates from a 0.75% to.
Sorry, Jim, this is about the thing that we did, right? Like the webinar that was held here. Some folks participated online.
No, I think that was here.
This is the proposed value proposition webinar.
There were 3 of them. I attended 1. I was,
Okay, great, keep
it
going.
was something else.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't the thing that was on tonight's agenda.
Okay, so I'll unpause the time. Continuing, since EBCE began, its rates have been established relative to PG&E's rates for comparable products. While this may have been appropriate for a newly established community energy agency, it is no longer necessary. I believe this practice is now leading EBCE to charge its customers more than it should. A more fiscally responsible method for setting rates would be to estimate the operating costs, including appropriate market volatility risks and maintaining prudent reserves, and then divide those costs across the total projected energy sales while preserving the current incremental rate differences between the various EBCE products, Bright Choice and Renewable 100, and rate classes. EBCE states that as a Renewable 100 customer, I'm paying only 0.75% more per kilowatt hour today than I would be paying if I were a PG&E customer. While I believe this to be true, there's no way that I could confirm it by examining my own PG&E bill. To get a rough estimate of the reasonableness of EBCE's electrical generation charges, I compared my November 2022 PG&E bill with the November bill of a friend of mine who lives in Alameda. My EBCE generation only charges divided by my kilowatt hour usage for the month was $13 13.81 cents per kilowatt hour. The energy charges from the Alameda municipal provider, power, Alameda Municipal Power bill for the same month was 11.72 cents per kilowatt hour. For basically the same rate class, EBCE generation charges were 17.8% higher than the Alameda Municipal Power energy charges. While I do not know what EBCE is paying to procure electricity, to me, this dramatic difference in generation charges suggests significant opportunities for potential rate reductions for EBCE customers if our rates were calculated independently and not tied to PG&E's. I'm asking the board to consider directing staff to evaluate other ways of setting rates for customers given EBCE's successful operation so far. Sincerely, your loyal customer, Jim Lutz. P.S. I'm a member of the Community Advisory Committee, but I'm submitting this comment on behalf of myself. PPS. My original email to publiccomment@ebce.org was returned by Google Mail with a message. The group that I was trying to contact, Public Comment, may not exist, and I don't have permission to post messages to the group. That was a technical issue that we've since resolved.
Thank you for resolving that. All right, thank you so much. Is there any other public comment that was great?
From Jessica Tovar, we received 2 letters. One will be addressed during the budget item, and the second letter, I will put 3 minutes on Now, I'll just start reading from the, not from the email, but from the posted letter. Okay. Great. Okay, so Jessica Tovar, a letter written on dated June 15th. The subject line is updated with signatories reject $15 million UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital donation. We demand EBCE fund asthma prevention by investing in a just transition for environmental justice communities. This is a letter from 2022. Is that what you want?
Oh, that was linked in
That
there.
was like, so you want me to read from the email?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so reading from the email, which I received on June, let me just read that, if you don't mind if I can read that. So on June 19th, 2023, Jessica Tovar writes, need for public workshop on $15 million Healthy Homes program. Dear EBCE Board of Directors, community advisors, and alternates, I am following up on concerns regarding the Healthy Communities $15 million embedded in the budget item. The item is in the budget to approve the first $5 million out of the $15 million from the June 2022 budget in the program. According to what CEO Nick Chastain shared with the board, the $250,000 was secured from an unnamed foundation to fund an undisclosed electrification, health and air study in conjunction with undisclosed partners. The EBCE $5 million was said to start the delivery and installation of induction cooktops. While we applaud the board for redirecting the funds towards EBCE's energy commitments, we are concerned that the details of this effort are still unclear to the public, including our community health professionals. As a result, I recommend the EBCE board instruct staff to clearly outline the details of the study, partners, and exactly what funds will cover so the public can effectively weigh in. The $15 million initially arranged with UCSF Benioff was a contentious legal issue, as the arrangement was made without a full public and transparent process and sought to give away an unprecedented amount of public funds. It would be necessary for the use of these funds to be shared in detail with the public, the Community Advisory Committee, and the Board of Directors so that we can effectively weigh in on the issue. In November 16th, 2022, the EBCE Board of Directors voted for an item that required a full, transparent follow-up to how the $15 million would be used. We would appreciate a follow-through on the transparency. I am linking the original letter sent by the East Bay Clean Power Alliance on June 7th and again June 15th with signatory organizations. Original letter from the law offices of Chat Brown, Karstens, and Mintier, September 29th, 2022. Thank you, Jessica Tovar.
As a clarification, do we really have $250,000 from an unnamed foundation to fund an undisclosed electrification, health and air study in conjunction with undisclosed partners? Were those not yet established at that time, or? I will follow up on the items that I hope there's some confusion in there, and it would be great if that confusion were clarified for so many reasons. All right, is there further public comment?
There is no further public comment at this time.
Okay. You're good?
Well, at some point, I just want to ask a question.
Oh, this, if you would like
Maybe
to
this
ask
is not
questions,
appropriate.
if you want to ask questions, this would be the moment.
This would be the moment.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
perfect.
bet.
Okay.
The speaker slip, but you can just go for it.
Terrific.
And you have
Okay.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Awesome. Okay. First of all, my name is Dan Glass. I represent a company that produces a high-density, clean energy, solar structure that can reach 120 feet in height, that can produce a megawatt of power in maybe 10 to 15% of the space normally required for ground mount. So you're buying your energy from various places on power purchase agreements I've seen. Some RESA, I know very little about what my energy company's doing, but I'm looking to find out who to speak with about how to introduce this product into the mix to increase your resource adequacy at a lower price, because to generate that power, you don't need as much land. There's also less line loss because you can generate it, store to where it's being used practically instead of out in the booths. That's pretty much the gist of it. So I'm just looking for, who do I talk to about that type of thing? And is there, some mechanism for me to bring this up to somebody?
Fantastic. And Adrian, can you provide, what was your name again?
Dan,
Dan, can you provide Dan with an email?
Yes, if you could fill out a speaker slip and provide your name and email address, we'll have staff reach out.
okay, perfect, thank
Look at
you.
that. All right.
Wonderful.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Are there is there any further public comment?
There's no further public comment.
So with that, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of minutes from May 15th, 2023. I'm looking for a motion in a second.
I got one correction to the minutes.
Great.
For the, on page 5, if you could just add under member Pacheco's comment under the committee discussed, that what I was referring to was AB 538. Thanks. And besides that, should I move to approve the minutes?
Excellent. Is there a second? Motion by member Pacheco, second by member Lutz. Can we please do a roll call vote?
Member Landry,
Yes.
member Hugh,
Yes.
member Lynn. Member Lynn,
Yes.
member Swaminathan,
I'll abstain because I wasn't present at the last meeting.
member Lacha,
Yes.
member Tavria, member Pacheco,
Yes.
member Souza, member Lutz,
Yes.
Hernandez, and Chair Eldridge.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
Great. Can you please send me the editable version of the,
Yes, I think that I emailed it. It should be in your email.
I missed it.
Now,
Excellent. Okay, so then thank you for that. We will move to the next item, which is the chair report. Traditionally, the vice chair would go over the items that are not on this evening's agenda. I'm going to do my best to run through them. Member Hernandez is excused this evening with some unforeseen circumstances. So if staff can back me up a little bit if I get any of this wrong. So on the consent agenda item, there are a number of CSA amendments. There is an item that we're going to be discussing this evening, a legal vendor approval, administrative procurement policy, contracts entered into, and a storage and renewable bid optimization software. There will also be energy prepay transaction, which is the third, and the emissions overview. And I would just like to point out that the emissions overview is the same presentation that we heard that got moved to the board, and then their meetings ran really long, so it got bumped to the next meeting, and then it got bumped to another meeting, and now it's at yet another meeting. So this is the same agenda item that we heard. We do have comments on this item. I will be presenting those comments tomorrow evening. So it's not that there's an emissions item coming forth. We've already heard it, we've got comments on it. So that's what's happening there. I'm going to ask JP to present. There was a really fantastic workshop that happened on community grants planning. And I just really wanted JP to have an opportunity to report back on that workshop. So JP.
Sure. Yeah, we had a community workshop on the night of June 7th on the community grants program, which is getting set up to issue our first round of grants. And the idea was to get some feedback on grant ideas for grant solicitations. We had good participation, as I said, about 20 people in real life and remote. Some of our esteemed community advisory committee members joined us as well. Member Lutz, Member Landry, Member Hugh, Member and Member Albert, Chair Albert, sorry. That was a given, but I did not know. Sorry. So yeah, we got some good ideas and been working with Heidi, who attendees met, our reporting analyst, to synthesize that. And the idea, I think, that Ann Olivia, the chair, Alden, and I discussed was to pull together an ad hoc meeting so we could do a follow-up. And that would allow additional community advisory committee members and the public to continue the discussion. And we are also requesting additional funding for the community grants program in this year's budget of another 1.4 million. So it'll be 5.6 million total. So it was really good to hear some community feedback, get some ideas. We'll be amalgamating those and bringing that back to this body and the community to discuss further.
Thank you. On that, I did request that something as bizarre is happening with my email, so if this happened, apologies. I did request that the online prompts that everyone received get distributed to the CAC. Were they distributed?
They haven't been yet. So we've been amalgamating those. We have all the raw inputs, so everything that was collected digitally, as well as photos of the board that we have here.
I phrased my question wrong. Would you please send the prompts, not the responses?
Okay.
So that the CAC can weigh in on those. It's important that you send them just to JP and maybe the clerk. And
yeah, I'll BCC everybody so that they can respond if there's a serial meeting. Yes.
And
I'll do that with both all the materials and the results, so that people can see that.
if what I'm requesting is that they get just the prompts, so they have a day to respond to it before you do the amalgamated results.
Okay, in sequence.
Yes.
Now I get it, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for being unclear. That's on me.
Yeah, no problem.
So what that means is, please take the time to fill that out. It's really important. Your feedback is important. We are a geographically and community representatively diverse group, and input on this is really important. And so please take the time to do that. I don't imagine there'll be a long turnaround between when those are sent out and when the results are sent out. So please, when you get that, just sit down, take 10 minutes and fill it out and give feedback on that. Does anybody who participated in that event want to share their experiences? Or what they thought?
I thought it was good. We had a little test glitch in our subgroup. The one, we weren't able to handle the whiteboard as smoothly as like think some of we were above, some could, I could. I was a bit puzzled about why it wasn't done through EBCE. But the announcement came out not from EBCE. if I remember correctly.
Did the announcement,
Board, not from the clerk,
Not from the clerk.
because it was the product.
Oh,
I would
okay. Okay.
I sent out messages for Brown Act meetings, but staff will send it up for their board.
Okay.
we should look into that because you just should.
We did, we talked with Andrew about it for a while on that process.
Well, yeah, it came from some other organization.
It was an Evite so that we could
Right.
register RSVPs and.
Yeah, which is not really.
Did you want to, is it appropriate for me to share more?
Yes.
thoughts? Oh, okay, great. I am behind on emailing my thoughts to Heidi, so I will just put it back in my calendar. But I thought it was a fruitful discussion of the cross-section of like advocates, community members, folks kind of weighing in on asking a lot of questions around like, what are the different considerations about if we go in this direction for grant circles or admin? What are the different like funding priorities that EBC wants to think about? What are the ideas that folks are really excited about? Some that might be helpful for this group. I heard pieces around like thinking creatively about existing services and programs, especially around direct services, and then layering on EBC priorities and technologies on top of that. So thinking about like, how can we connect EBC's interest on induction stovetops with local suppliers and food and resource giveaways, like just creative ways to serve our local community while meeting EBC priorities. I heard interest in filling funding gaps and promoting collaboration, leveraging local trusted messengers, focusing especially on specific hard-to-reach populations. We talked about renters, we talked about multifamily communities, and thinking about like, how do we broaden this network of who is doing energy or climate work, knowing that there are many other like creative messengers essentially that we can pull into the EBC. So I will type up my thoughts and send them to Heidi, but yeah, others to share. Great.
We also got a very broad range of people attending.
Yeah.
There was, domestic violence and organization representative. There was somebody from IBEW5 there. So I was impressed with that.
There was some glitches in some of the email outreach, but humans err. So does technology sometimes. So we'll be learning from that as we go forward. Just to provide some hard numbers for folks, and apologies if this is repetitive for anything that JP was saying. The community grant budget that was first approved for 4.2 million over 3 years. There was an additional 1.4 million to create a 4th year of community grants. So that's 5.6 million over 4 years. And although there were other pockets, like when we were looking at specific requests, there were other pockets of funds that were several $1 million that address some of these things that we may think of as community, things that community grants would be used for. So it may be helpful to really see all those things together. And it was really great to hear from previous grant recipients what their feedback was. So I think that was really positive. So thank you to the CAC members who did join, and really a deep thank you to JP Ross for putting this together. You're doing a really incredible job, and it's just really impressive to see your work. So that there are no other comments, Jessica?
Yeah, I'll give a quick comment. Personally, I was grateful to be in another in-person meeting. I had not seen a lot of you since before the pandemic, so that was a little weird and great at the same time. But I do appreciate the conversation of thinking about how to include these organizations that are already doing good work, but also really thinking out more possibilities. And it felt like the innovation part was really open. And so that's the part that I appreciate, because I do think that that opens and allows for other community-based organizations and efforts to come forth with something creative and thoughtful. So yeah, I really appreciated that conversation, and I'd like to see more of the notes that came out of like the input from the other groups. I think that would be great.
Did we have any public comments on this item that was written?
For the chair report or we do not have public comment for this item. For the budget.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for JP? Anything? No, all right. So I'm sure I'm skipping stuff, but that's what I got for you today. Oh wait. And I was looking to see if there was anything specific in the CEO report that needs to be gone over that is not on tonight's meeting. And I don't believe so. Okay, so that was painless. So we're gonna go to our next item, which is an action item. And this is the 2023-24 budget. And the staff recommendation is to adopt a resolution approving the 23-24 budget. And we will have, who will be presenting this item?
I will. Jason Bartlett, Senior Finance Manager.
Jason.
Great. So this is very similar to last month. Sorry, my screen is, give me just a second, please. Some changes were made primarily due to feedback from not only this body, but also from some subcommittees, the executive committee in particular, and the board from the May board meeting. In particular, the changes that we see, if you could go to the next slide, please. Is that, so in May, the ERA forecast came out. This was filed after the May budget presentation, and that resulted in a less than $3 million change in EDC's projected net position targets. This is with no change in the value proposition, which we are still recommending to be at a 5% discount for Bright Choice and a 1/4 cent premium for Renewable 100. This additional $3 million has been allocated to local programs to extend community grant fundings and CBO Resilient Hub development. Additional changes or fluctuations in the budget are, minute, about 1.2 million, and this was due to energy cost fluctuations. So we'll see a net change from last month's presentation. Also in this, we address some detailed discussion on major risk factors, more on the personnel budget and the use of funds under different value proposition scenarios.
Jason, before you move to the next slide, can I ask a clarifying question on what you just said there?
Please.
Okay, so it says no changes to base case value proposition, 5% discount for Bright Choice, and a very
that's a 1/4 cent.
1/4 cent premium for Renewable 100, but that is still a change from our current value proposition, correct?
Correct, yes. Our current value proposition is a 3% discount and a 0.75 premium.
Great.
But it is not different from our previous presentation.
And then the one-time $9 credit on everyone's bills that turned into $13.6 million or something like that. Did you address that? There was quite a bit of feedback on that, I felt.
Right, yeah. So there is, I mean, that is still addressed in the presentation.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we will get to that. Okay. Next slide, please. This is a summary slide of the budget as a whole. Go to the next slide, please. And these are pretty much the same base case assumptions from the previous presentation. I do see a hand up from Shiva. Oh.
Yes, I had a question on your previous slide.
Okay, if we could go back, please. Yes.
So the beginning reserve balance column or the row to $230 million, is there an ending reserve balance column, a row? Or
so the ending reserve balance would be that plus 100 million.
179 million?
100 million. We do address that there is a waterfall scenario in which the surplus in the net position would be allocated to 100 million to reserves. I believe 50 million would be retained for working capital, and then the rest would be divided equally among carbon-free resource production and also a dividend or credit back to EBC customers. And that is addressed in more detail on a later slide.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We could go to the next slide, please. And so these are the same value or base case assumptions that we presented at the last CAC meeting and the last board meeting. So there have been no changes here, but they're still here presented here for purposes. Next slide, please. So the carbon-free procurement options, this is also consistent with what we have presented at the previous meetings, which is proposing a 5% increase in carbon-free targets for 2023 and a 10% increase in 2024. So no change from previous presentation. Next slide, please. There is a slight change here, and this is as what Anna Olivia was referring to earlier, the on-bill credit average application. This is with, so this has, on the top line is our current average savings or premium to PG&E, depending upon if you're Bright Choice or Renewable 100. Each 1% change in Bright Choice or 20 or 0.25% change in Renewable 100 equals in that row, that adjusted amount. And so 5%, so the proposition that we are proposing is a 5% discount and a 0.25% premium, which, as you see, kind of lowers everyone's effective costs. And then the on-bill credit is what would be provided at the end of the year from that dividend distribution, which will also be further outlined, I believe, on the next slide, to give the total annual savings or premium for an average customer in these areas. Now, so, and this would amount to a $38 million savings for customers, which is 23% 23.2 million from the value proposition adjustment, and then 14.8 for the on-bill credit to be given later. And this does not include about a $6.6 million $50 bill credit given to all Care and FARA customers in the first quarter. So that is not included in this graph. So that's additional savings that we're pushing or passing on. Next slide, please.
To clarify, staff did not make any adjustments based on feedback around removing $9.94 per person and instead putting $14.8 million into regional activities and things like that.
So that'll be addressed on the next slide, I believe. Sorry, not this slide, perhaps the slide after this, but it is addressed, right. So it is discussed here somewhat. If we could go back to the previous slide. Thank you. Not that one, next one, thanks. And
Sorry,
so
anyone else having a little bit of difficulty hearing Jason? Is that just me? Is there anything we can do? I just worry that the content is so valuable, but I'm like having so much trouble hearing you consistently.
sure, sometimes it helps if I turn my video off. I do have some bandwidth occasional issues at my location, so I apologize for that.
I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I think there's an echo in your room.
Sorry?
There's an echo from your side. Your voice is echoing. It might be.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what to do about that. I don't have any other sound devices.
I guess just speak loudly and clearly.
Can you
Sure.
closer to the microphone?
Is it a volume issue or?
Your sound, that sounded more clear.
Better.
That was better.
Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. I did shut everything unessential off, so maybe we'll see how this works. So this is a comparative trend of basically the average rate a Bright Choice customer pays by year in dollars per kilowatt hour compared to PG&E. And so this is the, you can see that it goes up substantially in 22 and 23. And the proposal that we are putting forward in the value proposition works to reverse that, to try to get us back to those 2022 levels. And so one thing to note is that this is all inclusive of what a customer pays, except for transmission and delivery. So this does include the PCIA. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Next slide, please. So here we discussed about what each change in the Bright Choice, what 1% change in Bright Choice is on a dollar value, as well as a 25-cent change in Renewable 100. And we see that a 1% change and a quarter-cent change roughly equates to about $11.5, $11.6 million. And the idea that I believe we're going for here is to express how that could be rather put towards carbon-free energy options. And that would, so basically, instead of the value proposition being reduced, we can have the conversation about what adjustments we could make to that would then be used for carbon-free energy production purchases rather than discount. So Any questions on this slide?
So what I'm seeing there is a discussion on changing the value proposition as opposed to the on-bill discount. Correct?
So let me see, it should,
You finish your slide. If you haven't addressed it at the end, I'll ask it at the end.
yeah, please do. Thank you. Next slide, please. Right, so here is the proposed surplus waterfall, where so $50 million gets allocated of the net position. 50 million is retained for working capital needs. 100 million is added to our reserve fund, with the 50-50 split to with the excess going to long-term renewable options and on bill credits for customers.
Whatever you did to make your, whatever you did to make your sound quality better is gone away again.
Oh.
Maybe if you could sit closer to the microphone or speak closer to the microphone.
Sure. Sure. So to review this slide, the net position estimated at 1.79 and some change million. The proposed waterfall allocation would be is presented here, with 50 million being retained for working capital needs, 100 million for reserve account, and then 50-50 split of the excess to go to incremental long-term renewable clean energy investments and one-time on-bill credits to customers. Was that more clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great, good. Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Next slide, please. Okay. So at this point, I would like to return to Anna Olivia's question, because I'm not sure if it is addressed here in the remaining slides.
What I saw was that staff has not made any changes based on the feedback from the CAC or the board in relationship to giving everyone $9 and some cents instead of putting $48 million into something that might have a larger impact. So that's my question was addressed.
Okay.
We can continue.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So yeah, that struck me too. So
We should wait till the end of his presentation and then we can get into discussion about it.
all right.
This is a slide that discusses the risk management. This was asked for by board directors, and what this shows is the black line is the annual average market clearing price, and the blue line is the actual market clearing price, and the gray shaded area moving forward is the volatility projections looking forward. Traditionally or historically, market prices have averaged between the $30 to $50 kilowatt range or megawatt hour range, and currently it's up near 80, and we could see a large spike, and that was December of last year, where it went over 250. In recent months, prices have come down and have stabilized, but we're still experiencing a large range of volatility between 50 to 60%, when historically it's in the 10 to 20% range. So this creates an increased risk on working capital requirements, and which is the basis between our hedged costs and our retail sales. So essentially our open position. We generally hedge 60 to 80% of our portfolio each year against market prices. And the balance of that is effectively hedged via the PCIA, but that takes a significant time in the business cycle to realize, generally about 2 years. But that does count as an effective hedge. So when prices decrease, the PCIA increases, which reduces our operating headroom. And when prices increase, the PCIA decreases, which increases our operating headroom. And since we've been in a period of high prices, we've been enjoying low PCIA. And although the fiscal years have been net positive, calendar year 2021 was operationally negative, with margins being squeezed from the low 2020 prices and the low PCI or in the high PCIA that was set with 21 rising prices. Next slide, please. Additional risks that we use in our risk management is particularly with uncollectibles and write-offs. We had seen a dramatic increase in uncollectible occurring from the result of COVID. This increased, from about 0.5% to 2.5% of revenues during that time. In the current year budget, we've seen it reduced to 2%, and we are projecting a further reduction in next year's budget to 1.5%, and in the rest of this year, and 1% in 2024. Our uncollectibles are generally at a higher range than other CCAs based on regional income demographics, and so we've done a lot to kind of mitigate that, particularly pushing fair enrollments, enrolling and helping with AMP and connected communities programs. Another area of risk that we face is opt-out risk. We don't have any anticipated risk of increased opt-outs with our established communities at this time. But when we do enroll new communities, we generally estimate opt-out rates between 5 to 10% of total accounts. Currently, jurisdictional wide rate is about 4.9%. Changes to the value proposition or in a negative direction, or changes in product decision may increase opt-outs, but this is generally difficult to estimate as we've, without having had too much volatility in our rates. It's hard to tell what exactly our community would do with such a dramatic change, but we do pride ourselves on having kept our rates relatively stable relative to other CCAs. Another risk that we face is, of course, financial market and economic risks. Recessionary risks can, alter load or increase uncollectibles. There's also, as we've seen recently, banking sector risks, cash and deposit and credit availability are of course probably on the more extreme and unlikely ends, but they do happen. However, we have verified that we are fully cash collateralized with all of our deposits between FDIC insurance and diversification in our banking practices, as well as coverages through our ICS account. And then there are, other environmental risks, wildfires, for example. During the 2019 PSPS event, we did see a disruption or a reduction of 6% of our load for a full day. And we did see in 2020 a similar kind of event, which disrupted 2% of load consistently over 4 days. So while long-term wildfire and PSPS events do maintain some additional risk to our revenues. Next slide, please. This is the local development fund. As you see, we are transferring $25.5 million we are proposing to transfer 25.5 million to the local development fund for it to continue and increase its operations. This is increased from our last presentation by the 3 million that was noted before due to the change in the ERA filings. Now, the slides that follow are after this are going to be very specific for local development programs, to which I would like to caveat that I am not fully qualified to address, but I will do my best to present them as they are. But keep in mind that I am not the local development director. And,
Hey, Jason,
yeah.
this is GP. If you want,
Oh, JP's there. Great. JP, can you take it from here?
I'm happy to take it from here. Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Great.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, next slide, please. So as you all know, we're heavily focused on transportation electrification, as we have been in the past. Electrifying transport not only has clean air benefits, but it, disproportionately our emissions from both light and medium and heavy duty vehicles disproportionately impact our communities of concern. And so everything we're doing in that space has a focus, an equity focus for our customers. Next slide, please. So we are thick in development of our public DC fast charging projects. So we have received board approval to fund our network of chargers, and we've got 10 projects that are currently in development. We've talked about this on many occasions. The siting of these projects is in currently city-owned lots and garages that we're getting site control of, and have been prioritizing our multifamily hotspots that we've mapped to serve renters and residents of multifamily housing units. So we're kind of putting money aside each year to fund that development. It's very capital intensive. We look to do another round of support for medium and heavy duty vehicles, similar to the, or maybe similar, we will see, to the Forum Mobility project loan that we provided for, I think it will end up being one of the state's largest medium and heavy duty charging centers out in Livermore. So we've allocated some more money to that. Our new senior associate of passenger EV adoption, Brett Wiley, who joined us a couple months ago, is working on a solicitation for helping to accelerate the adoption of new passenger electric vehicles. So we're working on that. We'll bring it back to this body and the board as we approach this solicitation. And then we have our e-bike program that we have selected a vendor for, clear results. Out of a public solicitation, we allocated $2 million last year to that program, another $2 million from this year's program, and then we plan to do another $2 million next year. We also got $4 million from ACTC to run that program. So that is going to be developing a lending libraries so people can borrow e-bikes for a bit of time, and then incentives, and 40% of those incentives are required to be spent on our lower income customers. Next slide, please. So with building electrification, we have a couple things that we want to do as we've been working to electrify buildings and educate our customers around the benefits of electrification. One of the inhibitors to helping customers electrify homes and businesses has been kind of electrical contractors and their responsiveness and the price sensitivity that customers face when they're trying to electrify homes. It's a bit of a morass. If anyone here has tried to install a heat pump or an induction range or anything like that, it's hard to get people to come. It's hard to get people to call you back. So we are hiring a building electrification channel manager, and their responsibility would be to build out a network of contractors where we have kind of a service level agreement, an SLA, around responsiveness, response times, and try to get some reasonable pricing in place for helping homeowners and business owners electrify their buildings. And so we're also going to be putting some money into incentives there. There'll certainly be an equity element of that. And in talking with some of the electrical contractors and HVAC contractors who are currently doing electrification, they're also really citing a lack of kind of new workers who are coming into the space, electricians coming into the space. So we've already partnered with Cypress Mandela and Las Positas and Rising Sun and some of the organizations that are doing workforce training and provided them some grants in the past. And what we are looking to do here is to create some kind of apprenticeship stipends. And there's some existing programs as well that we can leverage so that we can bring new electricians into the workforce and help people with their first 6 months or so of employment, because not only does the workforce training need to happen, but also people need to then get into the workforce, see what it's like to work in the field. And so these two things would be intrinsically linked. You'd like to have your workforce training apprentices going into and being used by the electrical contractors who we're partnering with and providing work to through our efforts. So quite a bit more on our building electrification coming up. Next slide, please.
A question about the Los Positas. Are you working on with them on an apprenticeship program, a pre-appren, or can you say what you work?
Yeah, so we gave both Cypress Mandela and Las Positas some workforce development grants. They were pretty small. They were back in, I think that was about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. And so, yeah, we built those relationships already, and we're looking to, continue that, but we haven't made any.
I have a program designed yet.
Yeah, that once our new building electrification channel manager comes on, then they'll be taking this up, but doing interviews on that right now.
Do you have contact? Maybe $595. What are they, or do they have suggestions?
Yeah, so my building electrification channel manager is going to take this on when they join.
Okay.
Joel has his hand raised.
Yes, JP, a quick question. In this slides, you showed 1.5 million for the electrification workforce training program. That's interesting to me. Just curious, for that 1.5 million, is that all from EBC budget, or is a mix EBC budget and some federal grant?
Right now, these are our budget dollars. We don't count for dollars that we get from other parties in our budget.
Okay, I see. And who are we partner with?
Hasn't been selected yet. I'm hiring a new staff person who's going to be responsible for this work.
Okay. Have you considered I know like a community college, or they sometimes have some program to increase the skill for future workforce. Have you considered or have we considered partner with a community college in our area?
I didn't quite understand that, but I think you said community college partnerships.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have done a grant with Las Positas, who has workforce training in the past. And we will look for other partnership opportunities with some of the workforce, with whoever is doing workforce training in this space who would want to participate. Again, this is budgeting, we're not rolling out the program now, we're requesting the budget to roll out the program.
Understand. You answered my question. Thank you very much.
Sure. Next slide. So another piece of work that we'll be commencing is our Healthy Communities program. So this is a 3-year program totaling $15 million and to install induction ranges and stoves in homes with families who have children who are suffering from childhood asthma. And our role will be to deliver and install the induction, the feedback from the board has been very clear that we should kind of stay in our energy lane. And so we will be allocating our money to that work. Again, the importance of building a network of installation contractors is critical for this work as well. Those are the folks who would do that installation work. We have been working to identify healthcare providers who can work with us to basically provide kind of induction as a prescription. It's kind of the idea. Doctors would have families, identify families who are lower income, have childhood asthma, and then give them a prescription for a new electric kitchen, and we would fulfill that prescription. So since we haven't, since the board said we should be focused on installing the induction, we are not allocating our funds to the healthcare part of this. We'd be looking to raise additional funds from somewhere else to do that work. We did, we have been busy trying to find some of these partners, and we did get a philanthropic commitment from, it's an energy related foundation in the area for $250,000 in kind of startup funds to help bring a healthcare partner on board. None of that's been allocated. They've said that they have an interested party, this foundation does, who would like to help fund this work, but we don't have the work ironed out yet. So we're using that to try to get people to come to the party, if you will. And we're also, deep in conversation with folks who are doing some of the air quality work and some of the health impacts associated with poor air quality in Alameda County, San Joaquin County, and other parts of the state to, again, try to identify, you need doctors who can provide induction as a prescription. You also need a researching body who can follow these families, figure out what their rate of asthma is, how they're filling prescriptions, how many times they're going back to urgent care or the emergency room or visiting their doctor. So there's a pretty intensive research element of this that is key if we're actually going to tie the transformation from gas cooking to electric cooking to actual market health impacts in a home. So that's what we're trying to find is different parties who are interested in partnering with us on this. And we're working to help hire the building electrification channel manager. So once we have identified a pathway for delivering on this, then come back, bring it to the board. Next slide.
So just quick clarification on that, as this is speaking almost directly to the undisclosed partner with the undisclosed funding and that kind of stuff. So there's a verbal agreement. We can't say that individual's name or the organization's name out loud yet because we don't have an actual commitment from them.
We don't have a funding agreement. So we have been talking with folks in the foundation space and saying, we have the money to do the electrification work. We don't have the money to do the healthcare piece. And so, so in our efforts to find money to do the healthcare piece, somebody has stepped up and said, well, they can provide $250,000. That's not enough to do a 2,000 participant 2-year longitudinal study, but we may be able to use it to say, write a grant or bring somebody else to the party.
So as opposed to undisclosed, it is just yet to be determined, right? Like we're working on filling in those pieces. We just don't have them yet, as opposed to we have them and we're just not telling you.
Sure.
Great. That was a helpful clarification. Keep going.
I have a question on this. How much of EBCE staff time would be coordinating the healthcare research part of it? How much is just finding people, so once you find it, they can do, I mean, you gotta coordinate scheduling and all that, but I thought the instructions to EBCE were pretty clear. Don't spend a lot of effort on the research side.
Yeah, so the goal here is to, get a different kind of either project manager type role outside of the organization, or we talked with some healthcare providers who can do the whole thing. They're vertically integrated and they can do patient origination, they can do the research, they can do all the the longitudinal test. It depends on which healthcare partner or partners we're able to bring on, how complex that will be. But yes, our work will be fulfilling on the induction as prescription piece of it, and someone else is going to be doing the patient management and the project management of the research study.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been clear. Next slide, please. So we also have our resilience work. So we have been working on our phase 1 resilient critical municipal facilities program. We've got a bunch of applications pending for net metering. We received $2 million in federal funds there. So we're asking for another $2 million for expanding our resilient critical facilities work, as well as developing kind of a virtual power plant operating system. As we're bringing on more electrification, we need kind of a centralized system to manage EVs and further electrified buildings, solar and storage systems as well. And so we've got $2 million in that budget. Next slide, please. So this is then we are also requesting $2 million, an additional $2 million to respond to kind of the community's focus and desire for additional resilience work. This is a recent add to the budget after the first budget request, where we would provide some technical assistance as well as grant writing assistance to community initiated requests for resilience hubs. So we'd be looking to bring on some help to assist in that case. Next slide, please. And then our community grants. So we had $4.2 million in this budget. We're proposing an additional 1.4, which makes it 5.6. And as discussed, we had our workshop and are planning to issue our first cycle of community grants in the August timeframe, the second round in January. So we can do kind of two rounds within this fiscal year. And then we'd be doing additional rounds on an annual basis after that. Next slide. I think that might be it for me, Jason.
All right, as the primary person who's been interrupting on this, we're just going to take a quick look at the time. I'm going to keep my mouth shut until the end of the presentation. And if we can hold all the rest of the questions till the end so that staff can get through it. And then we can ask, because it is coming up on 7:30 already.
Thank you. So the rest of it's going to go pretty quick. It is basically just a re-presentation of slides from the previous board meeting, but just slightly adjusted with updated numbers. So if we can go to the next slide, please.
If you can just hit the changes from last time, that would be helpful.
Great. So next slide. No changes on this slide. The change on this slide is, Yes, the change on this slide is just the adjustment in revenues from the ERA filing. So next slide, please. There are no real material changes on this slide, except for that it's just a summary. Any change on this slide is just a change in the total energy operating expense, as with market fluctuation pointed out earlier, it was like $1.2 million difference from the last presentation. So no other material changes here. So next slide, please. Summary of the overhead position, no change at all in this slide. So next slide. So there is this is a bit of a more discussion of personnel. So we have 2 slides on personnel now instead of 1. And this just has the history of personnel from the 2021 budget to the 23-24 budget that's proposed. And it's demarked with the cost of living changes as well as the FTE accommodations. There are no questions. We can go to the next slide. No changes on this slide. So next slide, please. This is just an org chart. Next slide. This is no changes here, but it summarizes that we are asking for 15 new roles and 2 are existing roles that are rolling over that weren't filled. Next slide, please. So this is a new slide. This gives some demographics on personnel. Basically, so in the table on the left, it has the current values for salary, merit, retirement contributions, healthcare expectations, and total cost for a current employee compared to the total cost for an open employee. Is there a question? Okay. And then the middle table just shows when we are expecting to fill these positions to allow for a loading rate. This was asked for, and then also a distribution of position banding. So that's all there is on this slide. If there are no questions, we can go to the next one.
I actually have a question on there.
Okay, very good.
All right, nope, I'm gonna wait till the end. Keep going.
Okay. I believe this is not a new slide. It just this is the open positions with the salary bands. And so next slide, please. Marketing budget, no changes were made to this slide. Next slide, please. Legal policy and regulatory affairs, no changes were made to this slide. So next slide, please. Overhead, no changes were made to this slide. So next slide, please. G&A, no changes were made to this slide. So next slide, please. Non-operating activity, the only change made to this slide was the increase in the local development funding for non-operating expenses. It went from 22.5 million to 25.5 million. That is the only change. So next slide, please. And that's it.
Thank you, both of you. This is a heavy thing. It is the 3rd time that we've heard this. Is that right? So the part is just having them go over the changes because the rest of the presentation is the same. I have some questions, but I'd like to go to public comment first, and then we can do both clarifying questions and discussion, although I'd like to, yeah.
Great.
We're switching to 2 minutes for comments.
2 minutes. We have one letter from Jessica Tovar that I will put 2 minutes.
There's only one letter, 2, 3. That's fine.
And there are no otherwise hands raised at this time. Okay. Jessica Tovar writes, subject, increased community-based energy resilience budget dated June 19, 2023. Call on EBCE Community Energy, call on East Bay Community Energy to resource community-based energy resilience. We, the undersigned community-based organizations, members and supporters of East Bay Power Lines, call on for the board of directors of East Bay Community Energy to increase funding at least 5-fold in the 2023-2024 budget for community resilience. This funding is needed to begin planning and implementing community-based microgrids at community trusted resilience hubs. While we support the 2022 initiated Resilient Critical Municipal Facilities Project and its continued funding in 2023, 2024, many, quote, critical municipal facilities, such as police and fire stations, are not community-based nor community trusted spaces. As such, these facilities do not make appropriate resilience hubs for low-income people, people of color, immigrant, disabled, or senior community members during or in the aftermath of disasters and power shutoffs. Meanwhile, the need for access to emergency energy services during climate-related and other crises, particularly in communities long neglected due to systemic injustice, has increased dramatically and can be expected to become more urgent as the accelerating climate chaos brings wildfires, smoke, hurricane-force storms, life-threatening heat, and utility power shutoffs. EBCE customers in our communities already suffer from high energy burden due to soaring out-of-reach energy bills. Other energy inequities include poor quality housing with inadequate insulation, electrical panels, wiring, etc. Power shutoffs, planned or unplanned, aggravate already stretched household budgets and disproportionately high energy burdens with lost food, jobs, and other complications. We are calling for EBCE to be board to address these serious inequities in energy access, which mostly affect Black, Indigenous, people of color, and immigrants. The EBCE microgrid project for municipal agencies should be adapted to include community accessible and community trusted places. We applaud the decision to begin including schools, but we would like to see community centers, shelters, senior centers, places of worship, and other community identified locations be included. Ultimately, community-based microgrids can help reduce energy bills, provide energy resilience, and benefit local distribution and even transmission grids. California leads the nation in having the most schools with solar panels installed, and that adding battery storage would make them the best candidates for community resilience centers. We're at time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There are no hands raised this time. We have
Just a support. Yeah, okay. I have a few questions. Okay, so on the healthy communities, the budget for 5 million, and I see here replace 1,000 to 2,000, like, it's not clear like where that exactly that 5 million is going. Like, does that also include the staff person that you're hiring for? Yeah, I think there's just a lot more questions and things that are unclear, which is why I was prompted after having a community meeting to send the email that I sent yesterday. And if, yeah, I think that like kind of like how we're doing the community grants that could be released for this issue as well. So that other folks who are, you know, interested can weigh in. So that's on the healthy communities. And then on the virtual power plant, the resilience, I appreciate the money that was allocated for technical assistance, but I do think that there's still room for East Bay Community Energy to support, you know, nanogrids, not just on schools, but maybe even community centers, for example, senior centers. We've talked about places of worship. I know that Nick has said that I guess they funded something through a grant 4 years ago and a church was sold. So his concerns are like that the facility will be sold. And another concern he said was that people would be turned away from, you know, the resource. And I think that there's still, I think that it you know, maybe there was a lesson learned from what happened in the past, but I think that there's a way to continue figuring out where are like the points of unity and how we can make this real in our communities instead of just saying, you know, one flopped and so we're never going to do this again. So I wanted to emphasize that and the fact that, you know, again, for years since 2020, it's been like an urgent we need to have some kind of islandable power source. And being that we're living in the face of like power shutoffs that are instituted supposedly to prevent fires. The last input I will give is just really quickly around the community grant, and thank you for clarifying that you will be, there'll be opportunities both in August and January, and yeah, I do think we should be doing that soon. And I think what isn't clear maybe is that this pot of funding should be funded every year. As the program continues to make money and has surpluses, it isn't that you grant for the next 3 years and then never again. This money needs to be replenished every year. So I do appreciate that another 1.4 million was added. But I do think overall that East Bay Community Energy, being how much money it's making now, can do a lot more. So I will say that. That's it.
Thank you. Just as a clarifier, because normally Ed helps take notes, but he isn't able to be here today. So still room to have resilience hubs on community centers, faith places, and what else did you say? Senior centers.
Senior centers, those were just examples, I think.
Right.
You know, the list can be,
yeah,
things can be added to the list.
Perfect. And then just to follow up on that question really quick, on all of the buildings that we fund in the county, we have 55-year requirements, like for the affordable housing construction. Anyone who takes that has to sign a thing that says, even if they sell the building, these requirements are still there. Do we have any of those safeties built into, like we can build those safeties into what we fund on buildings so that if a church sells, they still have to be providing these services or whatever. Do we have any of those safeguards built in?
So in our program, it's all municipally owned. Our current program is just municipally owned. And that also includes libraries and senior centers and food banks and other things that are run by the city. So that's already sitting in the portfolio of projects that we currently have within our resilient critical facilities, in addition to police centers and admin buildings and other things like courtyards and other things like that. So yeah, we're already doing those and happy to do more. So as far as kind of restricting future uses in point of sale, you can choose to do that. You have the likelihood of dramatically reducing your participant pool if you're gonna put that requirement on. But that building then has to provide a service to the community for 55 years. So a building owner may say, well, I can't promise that, or so, you know, that's a decision that you have to make programmatically.
Thank you for the clarification. I'll follow up on that with a few things. This can also keep us from investing in something and having the building sold.
Well, that's right now why we're doing this with our municipal buildings, because they really don't transact and sell. They don't just like sell off their stuff that frequently, like a library is a library or police station. So like those types of transactions happen much more frequently in the private or nonprofit space, where people don't tend to own their buildings as long as cities do.
Thank you for that clarification.
Cool. Can I piggyback on that really quickly? When the state was building that program, the Community Resilience Centers program, we wrestled with exactly that question. There is a specific part of the guidelines, I'm happy to send it along if it's helpful. We like named the different parts on like deed restrictions, there's like different kinds of documentation to sign and like establish a little bit of certainty while not inadvertently screening out different kinds of facility and applicant types. So I can offer that to staff. That'd be helpful.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. I'll go last. Questions? Go for it.
So
Then let me know if anyone else has any.
I actually have a couple questions, comments, but I'll stay to one topic and then step back. I do have a question. I'm not sure I understood this because it just seems too good to be true. That so an increase of 5% of the carbon-free procurement is anywhere between 3.6 to 21 million. Is that just for one particular program, or is that across our full portfolio. And I'm curious if maybe we need explanation, a very quick explanation of the low end, the 3.6 million per 5% that leads to what that resource is compared to the 21 million. And then I have a comment after maybe Jason or JP.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the range is pretty broad. And so to answer the first part of your question, is organizational wide. It's not specific to any one program. And in fact, it mostly would, in fact, it would entirely be applied to the Bright Choice product, as the Renewable 100 is already 100% renewable. So any increase in carbon-free content or renewable content would be applied to Bright Choice content, product content specifically. Now, so the range on that is really kind of contingent upon a couple of things. One being the market prices. You know, we are seeing some volatility in market prices, and the second aspect being the type of energy that is procured. For example, renewable content associated with wind and solar is at a much higher rate than carbon-free content generated from hydropower. It's really in how we source the carbon-free content.
And so, I mean, again, we don't have time right now, but just the 5% is big dams in Oregon, and the 21% is rooftop PV.
The millions, yes, yeah, essentially.
Okay, it would be, no, it would be good. It would be interesting to see a slightly more detailed breakdown of that in the future. But thank you. That's helpful. So that was a question. The comment is, I too, I see that the discussion is not changed from previously or staff recommendation about the $9 and some odd cents per customer value proposition. That I again think that would be better spent, that 11.5 million around in either lowering our carbon content by procuring, carbon-free resources. Since that money would, if we did that, would be taken from our individual ratepayers, then it may be more appropriate to, maybe expend that money or use that money for like our resiliency centers. So like Jessica and Local Clean Power are suggesting to add to our resiliency centers and community programs. But yeah, I would like to see at least at a minimum that we report out that, I don't know if we need to take a vote, but I still think that.
It'll be part of the motion I'll be making.
Okay. Yeah, I still think that 11.5 million or so would be better spent on local business development, plan resources, or community grants or some such. And I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Did you have a response, Jason?
Oh no, just thanking him for the comments.
Great, thank you. Does anyone online have a hand up?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Member Landry?
Yes, I'd like to get some clarification on the increase in value proposition. Is this the 11.5 million we're talking about? And
it's 14.75 million for the one-time bill credit and 23 or something like that for increasing our discount from PG&E as their prices are expected to go up. This is an attempt to mitigate some of those rising prices for our customers. So there's two different dollar amounts. One of them is a one-time bill credit, and that is equal to 14.75 million. And then the other one is generally easing the electric burden costs for all customers. But there's an additional $50 one-time bill credit for care fair and medical baseline communities that no one has talked about removing, like keeping that $50 credit for those most in need.
Absolutely. How much on the average bill, so I have a, a little bit more concrete understanding, the 3 to 5 discount for White Choice, how much would that be annually for the average customer? I mean, how much credit would they get? And then the renewable 100 from the 0.0075 to 002.5. Again, how much of a discount annually, or how much of a credit annually would that amount to, please?
Sure. So that can be found on page 6 of the presentation. And to explain that a little more clearly, that it depends on, whether or not it's a residential or a commercial or industrial customer. But speaking specifically to residential, each 1% change in the Bright Choice product would be about $6.58 savings. So a 2% change would be about $13 in savings for a Bright Choice customer. For the renewable 100 customer, each quarter cent change is about $10.90 thereabouts, and so a half-cent reduction on that would be about a $21 to $22 savings.
Is that annually or is that monthly?
That would be annually.
$22?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that is a discount, but I kind of feel that those monies could be used in other areas.
So there is a bigger advantage that is seen by commercial and industrial customers. Again, it's proportionally perspective. So a Bright Choice commercial industrial customer would see, with a 2% reduction, around $160 in savings annually for Bright Choice, and $270 for renewable 100. But those are the commercial and industrial accounts.
Well, I would also echo what committee member Pacheco and public comment from Jessica Tovar is, I would like to see additional investments in microgrids and other resiliency centers, because of the obvious impact which we are moving towards, more increasing weather changes and climate risk. So I'd like to see some additional investments there also, or increasing investments to the extent that the budget can, afford it.
Thank you, Member Landry.
Yes, thank you very much.
Member Liz?
I'm going back to why we keep staying with value proposition, why we do our budget based on what PG&E, we think PG&E is going to do. And how hard would it be to say, this is what we think we're going to need for this next year, this is how much we need for volatility and all those other risks. Here's how much we've got to spend. What do we want to charge to pay that amount? Instead of tying to PG&E. And I don't know if that would make it easier for you or harder for you to do all these budgeting calculations. It's just a question.
It's in.
I can speak to that somewhat, but not entirely, and I apologize. I'm not fully qualified or versed on the cost of service payments or rate setting, to which is what you're referring. But I do know that that is part of our organizational goals that we are working towards, and it is a kind of a heavy lift to transition all of our rates to that. But that is, I know, something that is in the works, and that's about to the extent that I can speak to it personally or professionally.
And to provide a little bit more clarification on that, the board would have to direct staff to move away, because it is in our JPA that we set our prices in relationship to PG&E's. So it has been brought up to the board, and until the board directs staff to do so, they can prepare cases, but they can't actually make that change. So.
Thank you.
Number two, do you have?
I didn't say anything.
No, I was just checking to see. No. All right, I have a couple. So the first piece is the last feedback that the CAC gave to the board was that the one-time $9.94 per person, like the 50-50 split of any excess in the waterfall, that it was more advantageous to our community to keep the 14.75 million as a whole and to put it into lowering carbon emissions or increasing local development or really focusing on resiliency centers. I think those were what we talked about as a group. I'd like to put that back into what we bring back to the board this time. There was support from that from board members. So I think that it is also reflected in our risk management scenarios, which was really good. Thank you for doing that. That was fantastic. This was a really good presentation, and the responsiveness to several of the questions that were brought up is really impressive. So one of the risks that was identified, though, is we lose our customers lose their power, and that can affect our income, but it also affects our customers who've lost their power. So moving this funding into either increased local energy storage, increased resilience, increased that kind of stuff, instead of $9.94 can also help us really hedge in a very real way against our customers losing. So I just really want to throw that in there. When moving into building electrification on slide 15, you don't have to slide through this slide necessarily, but when you bring this person on who will be building out this program, which is very exciting, and that's really cool that you're doing this, if you could please consider geographic distribution of workforce training partners. There tends to be a concentration in Oakland. I was really happy to see one in Livermore. We are working on creating some of those lists at the county. That might be an easy information share things to help do that. Going as fast as I can. The resilience, so slide, resilience and PPPs. This is really cool, and it seems as though staff has capacity to handle an additional 35 million in federal funding, even if that means hiring another staff or whatever. If they can handle this, then I think that they can handle the additional 14.75 that got put into this project. This is really great. This is a very cool incredibly forward-thinking, very like leadership project. And this is exactly the kinds of things that we wanted. Is in the local development business plan. Like, this is good. This is like the good. So please expand these efforts. They're awesome. This one just says, love this, thank you. So, so thanks for that. On the community grants, I'd really like to see 250,000 in there for the innovation grants, those little small ones where people can't, they don't have the 3 years in them yet, they don't have the experience yet, but they can develop a pilot and test it. That was something that I heard pretty consistently during the workshops. It's feedback that we've received, and it isn't enough to run a thing for a long time, but the $40,000 to say, can you make a pilot that'll make this work? Or can you make a pilot that says, this would work if we did this, might make those people eligible for those larger grants. And I think they're really important for the kind of innovation that we're gonna need for mitigation, adaptation, you know, all the things that are coming up. I really am happy to see the increase in staff budget, hiring staff to internalize efforts, and with our level of quality is really important. Big support. On slide 30 though, you had a personnel demographics breakdown, and I thought it was missing some kind of important ones. I'd like to see the gap between the lowest and highest paid workers, as well as a breakdown, not individuals, but a breakdown by what is the difference in gender salaries as well as race. And it would just be good to see how we're doing on equity in our hiring and staffing. And that is my little palette. So I would like to see what I heard here and what my notes got is that we would like to see the 50-50 split changed from, instead of being a one-time bill credit of less of $9.94. Preserving the $50 credit for Carafera and medical baseline customers, use the 14.75 million for lowering carbon content, local development, or resilient centers. I'd like to see the breakdown that I just asked for about the gender, race, high, low, that kind of equity inside of salary as part of our personnel demographics stuff. And I'd like that, and other than that, I'd like to recommend to the board that we approve this budget as amended. Are there other things you'd like to see in there? Yeah.
I just wanted to make maybe a comment or a question. Thank you, sorry, acclimating. If my memory's right, I think Sonoma Clean Power, after some of the, really horrifying wildfires that they've encountered in their service territory, one thing that was really beautiful that they did was they were actually able to move their dollars fastest to meet very immediate needs for folks in their service territory. I don't know, does EBCE have something like that? Is that something that would show up as its own line item in the budget as we're thinking about climate chaos moving forward, like the realities of, impacts to homes, lands, but I think more importantly, just like service disruptions to people in emergency circumstances or other resources, programming. I'm just thinking about, like, if we have this much money that is in theory available for a local community, are there other ways that we can, like create an emergency fund or something that is like more accessible in the event, sadly, of something that inevitably is going to happen? And then my other comment is, I actually want to echo what we've heard in public comments, that I think if EBC is able to offer more workshops and spaces for the local community to also bring ideas and ideally workshop ideas together to really think about, like, what is that overlap of meeting immediate local needs and community priorities and still advancing EBC's policy priorities. Like, I think that will actually create like a healthier ecosystem. It might also help more community members find spaces on EBCE staff. Like, it's awesome that you all are hiring. The salary ranges are bananas. There's so much need, there's so much talent in the local community. And so I wonder if like having more open spaces might also help build capacity. That'll also help you hire better staff. Sorry, other exceptional staff. I'm very tired, I'm so sorry. So the question is, do we have like an emergency fund, and like where does that live, and is that something that is possible in our budget?
Sure, well, so we did, so in COVID, we gave out $2.2 million, you know, that what in pretty short order for that emergency. And those were grants that were given to, you know, to both cities as well as, you know, I think there was 3 rounds of, you know, issuing grants to smaller CBOs, you know, who are providing assistance to their respective communities. So, yeah, and we pulled that money from a variety of places to respond to that emergency. And in the wildfires in Sonoma, I know that Sonoma Clean Power did a lot of work there, and they were also trying to really push for electrification in those new homes with some success. So, yeah, that's at the board's discretion.
So that doesn't, it's not something we like proactively create a fund for.
Create reserves, and those reserves are accessible.
I see, okay. So this, like on slide 9, the reserve accounting funding, that 100 million, conceivably, if the board decided that there was another emergency circumstance, they pull it from there.
Yeah, so some reserve have covenants around them from a credit rating perspective, and others have less, and Jason can speak to it. So there's different levels of accessibility of like what you can just write a check for, but we do have funding that is kind of accessible in times of emergency.
Was that a motion?
No, there wasn't a motion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was late to the party.
Okay, did you want me to make an amendment to my motion? I have the questions in here.
Okay.
But do you want me to amend the motion in any way? So, which is the support staff recommendation with the modification of changing the 50-50 split as the final tier of the waterfall, and instead of one-time on-bill credits of $9.94, while preserving the $50 credit for care for our medical baseline customers, use the $14.75 million for lowering carbon content, local development, or resilience centers.
I would love help from another brain. My brain is.
Was there something in there that you wanted me to add?
I don't know if it falls in the budget necessarily, but I think like the thread around can we offer more workshops as like a strategy?
I've got that as part of additional comments.
And then the piece around kind of like emergency funding as like a, I guess in my mind, emergency funding wasn't just like if your home burns down, which I think is more what Sonoma did, but also I'm thinking about utility debt, of course. So I think in my mind, maybe like emergency is a bit broader, which is why the kind of lane that JP mentioned might be a little bit more restrictive, but I understand it. This is the best my brain can do right now.
Consider creation of an emergency fund. We can check it in the
Thank
morning
you.
for clarification on that. I have the comment about having the board consider looking at moving away from PGE's prices as how we set our prices, but we do have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second, or I think Jim did.
Go ahead.
We both did, yeah.
Member Pacheco seconds. All right, so are there other things that you want added to this? Or can we do a vote? Yay, Member Swaminathan.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to the amended motion. I just like the portfolio approach staff has provided. I have a question on the modification. If we provide additional $14.7 million, you all have the capacity to spend it in the projects we have outlined. Is there staff capacity, and enough projects to actually spend it on.
The part of the place that the comment came from is that staff has in here the ability to take on 35 million new if they get federal funding for one area. They've got a variety of other places where they're seeking additional dollars. So they have already identified that they have capacity to handle some of those things, and it could include the hiring of additional staff.
Okay. Thank you. That's a clarifying question.
Staff could definitely answer that though.
So I think the budget we've proposed is the budget we have planned. We had that GRIP funding that you're referring to, the 35 million. That was kind of the hiring of additional staff is contingent on that. So we have a solar analyst in there. And so it was planned that we would hire another person if we got that GRIP funding. So, but other than that, I think we'd have to consider other additional staff that we would have to bring on board if we were going to take on another, $15 million worth of funding into multiple program areas.
Great. Okay. Can we do a roll call vote?
Yeah.
It's 8:10. Yep.
I just want to read again the final, not read, say
The
the motion
motion,
again, yes.
sure. It auto-corrected. Motion to support staff recommendation with one modification. Change the 50-50 split instead of a one-time bill credit of $9.94, preserving the $50 credit for care for a medical baseline customers use while preserving grammar. Use the 14.75 million for lowering carbon content local development or resilience centers as staff does. It could include hiring additional staff. In a separate section, I just have a summary of the comments like I always do for all the meetings.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Hughes.
Yes.
Member Liu. Member Liu.
Abstain.
There's 1 minute.
I like the staff proposal of the portfolio approach, and I would like to abstain.
Member Lottrell.
Yes.
Maria, Member Pacheco.
Yes.
Member Roots. And Chair Elder.
Yes. Jim, please pronounce your last name for us out loud.
Lutz. I know people with the same last name will say it, but, so I don't get too upset. But I am Lutz.
Lutz. Okay. Number of yeses?
6 yes, 2 abstain.
Perfect. Okay, so we have it's 8:12. Can folks stay for a quick presentation from Annie about the potential name change? Okay. We're gonna have a marathon run through of this.
Absolutely. Okay, not a marathon, this is sprint.
Sprint, we're gonna have a sprint run through of this.
Okay, so quickly, thank you all for the additional time. This is my colleague Teresa McDermott will be giving the bulk of the presentation very quickly. I did want to note that this is the third time we presented this name publicly before asking the board to vote on it tomorrow night. And that was following on a lot of work done by ad hoc committees of both the CAC and the board. So Chair Eldred and Member Boots, as well as Vice Chair Hernandez were the CAC ad hoc committee. And so thank you all for your time and effort in this. It's a little outside of our normal course of business, but hopefully kind of fun and exciting. I did want to say that we put together those ad hoc committees because generally when you rebrand or rename in a business, you don't do that in a public setting, but being a public agency, we are unique. And so we were trying to create that balance between getting the appropriate feedback and dialogue and input, with also being sensitive to sort of the market issues that are presented when you're thinking about changing your name. And so what I'd like to do is ask if you do have questions, write them down and we'll do them at the end. But Teresa and I have already messaged and we're going to go through this hopefully as quickly as we can, but still want to you to feel informed. So Teresa McDermott, please go ahead.
Great. Adrian, do you want to share the slides? Thank you. And thank you all for sticking around. You can go to the next slide, please. I will clip through this pretty quickly. Happy to go back and dive deeper into any of these sections at the end. And as I know, some of you have heard this message before, I won't belabor the points, but I am happy to go back and discuss anything in more depth. You can go on to the next slide. So first of all, just a little bit of background very quickly of, why we believe now is the right time to take this rebranding and specifically a name change. So you can go to the next slide, please. This is just an overview of kind of the history of where we are or where we've been vis-a-vis our look and feel. And I'm going to drill down in the next couple of slides to talk a little bit more in depth about what this is an overview of. So you can go to the next slide. In the beginning, right, we were all about educating people. You guys, many of you were important parts of that, but the job of all of our communications was to help people understand who we were and that we were a real thing and what we did. So you can go on to the next slide. And we created a brand identity that supported that, right? It was clean and good looking, but very much in the kind of realm of being like a utility or a CCA. It didn't stick out, it didn't stick out in terms of being kind of out of category or confusing to people. It did exactly what you'd want to do to educate people, to make them understand who we were and why they were in the right place if they were coming to look for information from EBCE. So very appropriate for a brand that was in a stage of education and building trust. You can go to the next slide. Great news is we've been successful. We're well on track to meet our 2030 goals of being 100% clean or renewable. And we feel that we've been successful in building the agency and in continuing to build the agency that we all want. You can go to the next slide. So that brings us to where we are today. And I'll spend a tiny bit, of time on this. Some of you have seen this already, but just to say, this is kind of, the reason we feel that we're at a point now where we need to kind of evolve our brand is because we're at this point now where, in addition to just supplying demand for clean energy, we also are at a point where we can help drive demand for efficiency and for programs around electrification. We've spent a lot of time talking about that already tonight. JP told us about all the great things his team is doing. We need to come behind with our brand and support that and help all of our constituents understand what these programs are and how they can take advantage of them. And to do that, we're moving from kind of like just asking people to do a transaction, basically take clean energy from us instead of your power from PG&E, which is kind of a commodity and something that people don't really need to think about too much. We're now asking them to take more consumer actions, kind of actions that are more emotional and maybe kind of something that they do expect from a consumer brand and not from a utility. What kind of car to drive, how to cook their meals on induction, for instance. And so it's this being at this point now where we're ready to add to our kind of area of communication needs, not just our commodity, but also these consumer choices. It's that kind of strategic imperative that tells us now is the time we want to evolve the brand to help meet that moment. You can go on to the next slide. And you can go on to the next slide. But as you all know, there's also, in addition to that strategic imperative, there's also this geographic imperative. Many of you have seen this slide before, this information. The net of it is we did research and people in San Joaquin County and Stockton specifically told us that they do not identify with the idea of the East Bay. And it didn't make sense to them that somebody's called East Bay Community Energy would be serving them because many of them have sense of the East Bay as being maybe too expensive or not sharing their values. At the very least, they just said, hey, Stockton's not part of the East Bay. That doesn't make sense to me. So as we think about bringing on Stockton and potentially in the future, other expansion in that area, we know we don't want the headwind of a name that that makes a big part of our constituency feel left out or othered or confused as to why we're there. So, so taken together with the strategic and this geographic imperative, the rebranding is appropriate, and the name change especially is kind of warranted, we believe. So you can go to the next slide, please. I won't spend much time on this. This is just to say there is some awareness for our current name, but it's not overwhelming. And we believe that we can keep those people with us, and with the additional communication we do with the name change, we bring them along and just build from there. You can go to the next slide. So that's the background. That's why we believe, now is the right time to do this. I want to talk a little bit about what we've done to kind of ensure that this is as public and open a process as we can, as Annie alluded to. You can go to the next slide. You've all heard from us in lots of forums for a while now about this. We've been talking about the idea of evolving the brand, and issues around this have been in front of the board and from the CAC for well over a year now, longer than I've been with the agency. You can go on to the next slide. Specific, now that we've laid this groundwork, specifically, we stated our intention, now we're doing the work, and we've had a lot of great support from the ad hoc committee. Thank you again. I'll echo what Annie said. Thank you to members Lutz and Hernandez, and to Chair Eldred. They've been invaluable kind of partners and guides to us in this. We've also had an ad hoc committee of the board that's been providing feedback and input, and we've met with our municipal partner staff, some of the folks that would be on the front lines of helping us to deploy this. So we're doing everything we can to kind of move this along and with our partners and with the input from the public, but also, as Annie said, kind of protect the things that have to be protected. And whenever you're contemplating a name change, you can go to the next slide. This is just a look at kind of how we've brought this name specifically to the public before the board vote tomorrow night. You can go to the next slide. And that's the name of all the folks, our ad hoc committees, committee members who have helped us. And so thank you to all of them once again. Next slide. And then this is just a little bit of feedback, tiny summation of the feedback we've had from the groups that we've met with. Overall, positive and supportive. We've had some good guidance from our executive committee meeting that took place last week. We had some good guidance in terms of how we might handle messaging once we deploy the name, assuming it's approved. And so, generally we're feeling good about the feedback we're getting, and we're very appreciative for some of the kind of more specific input we're receiving in this process as well. Next slide. And this is just kind of pull out real quickly to kind of for this group's benefit, state two things. Should the name be approved tomorrow night, absolutely nothing will change the next day, and it won't change for a while. We would use that process or that time between kind of now and August to be sort of building out materials that will help us get ready to roll it out in an orderly and thoughtful fashion. We'll be taking September to educate our stakeholders and to really get ready to roll this out. And then for the remainder of the calendar year, we would be doing a soft launch where, we're getting the name out there, but we're not doing heavy advertising. In the new year, we would start with a robust and comprehensive kind of advertising and communications campaign to make sure that that we are bringing all of our constituents along and getting them, even more involved and engaged. And we'll have the help of a number of exciting programs that are launching around that same time too, to really kind of maybe even have the opportunity for like a second shot at launching the agency. And really, now that people have some notion of what a CCA is, just building on the awareness engagement we already have and taking that to the next level. You can go to the next slide. So that was the engagement. Now I'm going to talk real quickly about how we went through the process of coming up with the name itself. You can go to the next slide. Lots of acronyms in our space. We heard from research, people don't like acronyms. We want to avoid an acronym where possible. You can go to the next slide. That said, we don't, there are things about our name we do not want to lose. And the most important thing we don't want to lose is the tie to community energy. So we made a decision early on as we explore different brand names that they always would have to be appended with community energy, because that's an important part of our identity that we have no intention of walking away from. Go to the next slide. There's a number of other criteria we developed to help guide our ideation and thinking about different names. You can read them there, but we wanted it to be something that was easy to say. We wanted it to be something that nodded to who we are and who we serve. And we wanted it to be ownable and trademarkable and all good things like that. And we wanted it to be a bit evocative and kind of a little bit more emotive than the acronym we have now. You can go to the next slide. Big process. Summary is here. We started with lots and lots of names, and we took them through an iterative process with all of our stakeholders and with lawyers and things like that. And we've narrowed it down to one that we want to present to you today. Next slide. Great. Okay. So one more, you can go one more. We're going to look at the name itself now and in situ also, but just to say we've dotted all our I's and crossed our T's, and should the name be approved, we would be ready to use it. It's been cleared for trademark. It's had a linguistic and cultural check. So we've had native speakers in all of the languages that are most frequently spoken in our territory. They've looked at the name and they've kind of tested it to make sure that it doesn't have any kind of untoward or negative connotations to it. And we've purchased our social media handles and reserved our URLs, which is the type of thing you want to do so people don't squat on those. So we feel ready to use this should the board approve it for us. Okay, big reveal. I don't know if you want to have a drum roll in the room, but here we go. For those of you who haven't looked at it before. Thank you. Yes, you can the next slide, please. Thank you. So we are proposing the name of AVA Community Energy. Next slide, please. So AVA is a shortened form of Alameda County to the Valley. So it's this nice, warm, easy to say name that kind of has the same sound and connotation in most languages you say it in. And it provides us this nice story of being able to say that we're community energy from Alameda County to the Valley and beyond, maybe. But it's nice, short, memorable, and provides us with an ability to get away from an acronym. We wouldn't use it as it would be AVA Community Energy, but we would not say ACE. We would say AVA Community Energy. And when we needed to shorten it, we would say AVA. So you can go to the next slide. And this just how it would sound in use, right? East Bay Community Energy is now AVA. We'd like to thank AVA Community Energy for being the climate justice sponsor of the Oakland Roots. You can see it sounds nice. It's nice and short. I know we've talked to our outreach guy and he's happy not to have to say EBCE, hopefully, because he's found that if he has to say that 500 times when he's meeting people at events, it starts to lose its meaning on his tongue. You can go to the next slide. You can see how this would look in a mocked up ad. We are AVA Community Energy. AVA is powering better living with clean, affordable energy. Go to the next slide. And that's just how it might look with a more business type application for one of our business customers. You can go to the next slide. AVA Community Energy. And that is our proposal. And we'd love any feedback or questions.
I do want to take a quick moment to say that 3 of us participated in the ad hoc group. And the number of names that they went through, the number of checks, the legal process, the what does this mean and how many different languages can you get it, what was there, what was available. It was really impressive. It was really, really impressive. And they were going through getting feedback from very different perspectives with different feelings. Like some people responded quite warmly to one name and other people were like, I hate that. I just hate it so much. And this is the name that there did seem to be unity around. And so I'm throwing my enthusiastic support and gratitude into our staff who are really hearing our constituents who will be joining us. We've got some pretty strong feels about the word East Bay. And well, I take great pride in this organization and what like all of us have done to help build this thing. I see the need for the change as we start serving other folks and it didn't become something absurd and like all inclusive of all geographic regions. I really appreciate that it still has a geographic focus of our two areas coming together. And so I really want to thank the efforts. It really does feel like you were listening and changing and responding and pivoting the whole time through this not short process. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the guidance and the input you've given. As Annie kind of intimated, it's probably not something you do all the time, especially like on a public board like this. And you were really all good sports and rolling with us and you know, meeting us where we were and helping us push us where we needed to be. We appreciate it.
I'll just add, perhaps the comment has been made, it's just really different, which I think is an absolute fair summary. But I think if you sit with it for a while, you'll find that it starts to feel and fit a bit better, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts and feedback.
Well, I thank, the ad hoc committee for their work. But I just have to say, I'm going to be honest about it. I understand, Alameda County Valley, we do, have to include the Valley. I certainly agree with that. Personally, I don't find this name inspiring or, and without the addition of community energy, I don't know if I would know that was, a community choice, agency. Now I say this in all due respect because I wasn't part of, the planning, the planning process. People still don't understand what East Bay Community Energy is to some degree. And I don't know if that name, while moving into the Valley, incorporates, what we do here. So those are my thoughts. I would have personally liked something a little bit more perkier or a little bit more flavorful to also include the Valley. So those are my thoughts, and I, most respectfully thank, the ad hoc committee for their work on this.
I will stay out of the discussion. I've learned long ago that my personal aesthetic is not shared by most people. This is about marketing to the populace, and what I like does not work with the general public. So I just thank everyone for their work, and I'll just stay out of this.
Member Swaminathan?
Enthusiastic, yes. I saw this in the packet for the board about 3 hours ago, and took me a while for it to sink in, but now I'm enthusiastic. Yes, and great job. I'm thinking about fresh air and breeze when I think of Ava.
That's cool. Member Luke?
Yeah, I want to thank the ad hoc committee to come up with a very interesting name. I didn't read this part of the package, so I didn't know the name and the explanation. When I heard about it, I feel different. It's interesting, a little bit surprised, but after the explanation, I feel very unique name, and I like the short name, and So overall, after hearing the explanation and thinking about it, I think I like this interesting name. Thank you for all the effort.
Oh yeah, public comment, shoot, sorry, I did that all backwards. Is there public comment on this?
We have, one hand raised for.
Just
Okay. So we had a community meeting and we did a go around to test out the name. And I have to say this one comment, well, two comments stuck out to me. The first one is the concern about just using AVA and losing the community energy.
Yeah.
And already in your advertisement and how you were using it, you did not use community energy. It says AVA is powering better, AVA is doing this. And so already it felt like if we were losing the essence of community energy, which kind of continues the community choice name. Because that's used a lot in a lot of community choice program names. So that was one thing. There was some concerns about like how much this costs to do and just concerns about how this would be very confusing. I do want to go down the line, but again, I want to respectfully share what was shared in the room. The first one was that it felt very genderizing. And so just personifying like the agency. Confusing, concerns with cost, it was an outright, I don't like it. The concern about losing community energy, the concern that came up in a previous meeting, which is, this is very tech, similar to Siri, Alexa, etc. One of the first ones that I got from a colleague was that it sounded more like a beauty product than an energy. So I think in what I got from that conversation is making sure that the AVA and community energy don't get pulled apart and be really intentional about that. So that'll be it. Thanks.
Yeah, just, can you give me a little bit of the demographics of the community meeting, at least like how?
Yeah,
many
there was
people-
nobody from Stockton or Tracy. At this meeting, it was folks who've been along with us for quite a while, and there was a handful of new people. Just to be clear about that. So it's mostly folks associated with East Lakeland Power Lines.
So age spectrum, geographic spectrum.
Oh, yeah, there was, it was a lot of older folks and then some of the newer folks have been younger folk and there was some youth part of that conversation as well.
It's cool that you had using that. Other factors that you would,
Or maybe you can give that feedback directly to Anne.
yeah. Thanks for holding the community meeting on the name.
It wasn't about the name, it was about other things, but we went over the name and stuff came up, so. It's gonna be AVA Community Energy and I'll fight for that one.
Huh, cool. Okay.
I'm confused procedurally what's happening. Are we doing public comment? Are we doing?
We only have, there were no hands, no further hands raised for public comment, so I assume that. Okay.
Yeah, so public comment is closed and now we're going back to board discussion. Sorry. I skipped that first
That's
discussion.
okay. Yeah, I too would like to offer my thoughts very respectfully. I appreciate all the labor and thoughtfulness and intent and the effort. I will take some time with this. I really like Andy's suggestion of like, initially there might be a rub, maybe take some time. I'll offer that my initial reaction was not super positive. I do want to echo the comment and concern about losing the community energy claim. That feels incredibly important and something really kind of important and aligning with the larger CCA movement and the community choice effort that is taking off nationally, and it is just like such a key part of the identity, the local politics, the fact that, you know, we have so many communities here, so many efforts grounded in workers' rights and local investment. So I just like really, really want to echo that point that Jessica made. I think for me, this question or this name prompts some questions. You don't have to answer them right now, but I thought I heard in your comments, Teresa, a few things about like maybe preparing for expansions. That was my first question. I was like, does this mean EBC is trying to prepare to expand? Is this about like trying to sell merch? Like, I think there was like a thing in here is like, it's super wearable. I was like, are we trying to like sell hats? Like, what is, I'm just trying to understand the angle. And then I think maybe similar to what Jessica offered, like to me, this name feels like it's trying to align with like the climate tech startup space. And I wasn't sure if that was like an intentional effort or like a directional change for the agency. And then, yeah, maybe the rest of my comments I'll keep to like a happy hour conversation. But yeah, just thank you so much for all the effort. And it is definitely the most different CCA name I've ever heard in my life.
I will just say, we're not trying to sell merch, but you'll all get merch. That's it.
Can I get one of the East Bay hats before they go out of style?
I'll put it.
I would love one, thank you.
Tote bags, I love the tote bags, if we're getting rid of them. Tote bags.
And to your question about expansion too, there isn't any like grand design about expansion, but it obviously, you know, the exploration as we're preparing to bring on Stockton and what we learned through that, you know, was I think it was a really loud, clear signal. And, you know, it felt wrong to ignore it. So there isn't some like kind of secret plan to take over the rest of California or something. That's not what's happening. But, you know, Stockton will be a very large part of our service area once they come on board. I mean, it's a big territory. And so that is the discussion around expansion that I was referring to.
Thank you for clarifying. And to be clear, I'm so excited about Stockton and Tracy and all these other communities, but maybe echoing Member Landry's comment of like, I wonder if there was a different way to celebrate that, but I also recognize that I stepped into this for about 10 minutes and everyone has been doing a lot of work on this for far longer. Thank you.
Yeah, like so awesome. Cynthia?
Yeah, is there any urgency to do this right now? I just feel like I'd like to see more input from both the community. I don't know how many workshops were done throughout the community, including Stockton and the outer areas. I'd like to see more community input. I do agree that I'd like the words community energy. I'd like to, unless there's a real need to do this tonight, I'd like to have this item come back with more community input. That would be, and I don't know if I can make a motion to that effect, but
do you want to?
So it is on the agenda for the board to vote on tomorrow night. I think we plan to present it to them and perhaps they'll have some of the same feedback, in which case we could be coming back to it. I'd say in terms of the urgency and why now, when we initially undertook this endeavor, we were anticipating service to Stockton in April 2024. It is unfortunate that that has been pushed back, and right now it is January 1, 2025. So the urgency was we wanted to establish this prior to sending out all of those. We have to send out 4 customer notifications by compliance. And then of course we were going to do a lot of outreach. And so we wanted to have the new name established before then. It does give us a little bit of breathing room, not that much. I think what it allows us to do now, should the board approve it, is be kind of through a transition and be better established. so that if we start service to Stockton January 2025, we have to begin notices in November. And so this gives us sort of a year of ramp up from the soft launch until that time. And then the second reason that we're doing this, and which I do still think there is urgency, it doesn't have, you know, a date on the calendar, but it's, we want to be interacting with the individuals who are, you know, part of East Bay Community Energy / AVA to influence those decarbonization decisions. And that's the one that probably has the most critical kind of climate change impact. And that urgency isn't going anywhere. That's definitely still there.
Absolutely. Just to further what Annie's saying about that, we have a lot of big programs that are going to be launching in, you know, the near term. You've heard about e-bikes and you've heard about our charging network and things like this. And these are kind of physical things that people can interact with that, you know, will carry our brand and, you know, and kind of serve as roving billboards for the entire agency. So we want to take advantage of that and have the brand that we want to kind of hang our hat on for the long term associated with those things, so we can grow that awareness and just really, you know, get people more and more engaged. So absolutely echo what Annie said. You know, we've, you know, good from a branding perspective, not good from a, you know, equity to the people in Stockton perspective. We have a little more breathing room there, but you know, but these big programs that we're going to be investing in and promoting are like right around the corner.
You know, it would have been, this is my last comment, it would have been helpful for me, I don't know about others, to have, you know, what the semifinal list was, you know, to just get a sense of, you know, what the other potential names were. I know, you know, we're not the ad hoc committee, but just to.
I believe that they can't do that because if something happens and they have to go to one of those other names and somebody else, like this has actually happened in another place where they tried to change their name but didn't secure all the domains first. Somebody else bought them and now holds their online presence in ransom, basically.
Okay.
So,
all right.
That was the reason that they did it as a private process instead of a public. Is that right? Did I answer that correctly? Yeah. Okay.
One of the reasons.
So the thing that I'm hearing from folks is strong sentiment around being intentional and keeping the words community energy in use, including as part of the branding. That the initial response was mixed, from enthusiastic yeses to I don't like this. And general gratitude for the efforts of staff and the considerations that went into the planning of the work. I'm gonna make a motion to support staff recommendation with that feedback, and it can pass or not. That is okay. Jim, did you want to weigh in on anything?
More of a Ernie's perspective. I'm more of a Ernie's perspective. I'm not a marketing person. I mostly got on the ad hoc to make sure that community energy stayed in the name. So that's the part that's important to me.
Okay. So I'm making a motion to support staff's recommendation and adopt the new AVA Community Energy as the new name for East Bay Community Energy, with very strong recommendations around the intentionality of keeping community energy in there and not losing it in our branding. And I'll include a rundown of the feedback around trying to align with climate tech startups, more like a beauty product, felt genderizing, questions about costs, and the gratitude for staff. And it can pass or not, but I think we should vote on it if there's a second.
Shiva seconding.
Okay. Member Swaminathan is seconding.
Melandri.
Oh, respectfully abstain.
Abstain.
Member Liu,
Yes.
Member Swaminathan,
An enthusiastic yes.
Member Lockton,
Abstain.
Member Pacheco,
Abstain.
Member Lewis.
Yeah. That's good.
Carol.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Abstain.
It does not pass. Great. That is the feedback we'll bring to the board. Thank you very much for the presentation and the efforts. I'll do my best to summarize the feedback from this body. And I'm going to move to the next agenda item, which is something I'm just going to say out loud because it is 8:49 and my vehicle's about to get locked in a lot and I'm not going to be able to get it out. So we are, there is a motion on the agenda to create an interim seat for Stockton and have a 6-month extension in our terms. Everyone has been reached out to about this. As of yet, most everyone has agreed. Just want to say it out there. And that's that. So we're going to move to the next item. Sorry, is there any public comment on that?
If there's no hands raised.
Great.
Is there any other change besides a 6-month extension?
Not at this, because the staff is looking at reorganizing some things to make sure that we have proper representation from a variety of constituent groups, geography, all that kind of stuff. They really want to keep this body intact during that time because we have the historical memory. And so helping this through the growth stage of an organization instead of bringing new folks in is really wise, and I'm grateful for everyone who's willing to continue serving. Yes.
So it's a 6-month extension plus add the interim Stockton member.
Can I ask, I don't have a position on this, but would the interim Stockton member be a voting member?
I think we try to mirror what the board does, and the board member currently is a voting member. So I think, yes. That's my assumption, but we can get clarification.
Alex, are you online?
He is not, he's on PTO, so I'm deputized as Alex tonight.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll clarify that. It might be in the agenda item for the board. I didn't read it yet. Okay, so we're going to move to agenda item 8, which is member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future CAC agendas.
And I also want to remind about the letter.
Oh, we do have one more public comment that was received today.
Yes.
Which is after 5 o'clock yesterday, but we will still read it into the record. Can you do it 2 minutes?
2 minutes. Hold on a second. This letter is from Tom Kelly.
Not here.
For 2 minutes. Tom Kelly writes, this is regarding the missions overview, which is item 20 on the Board of Directors, June 21st, 2023 agenda. Dear EBCE Board of Directors and Community Advisory Committee, I'd like to provide a bit more detail to item 20, the missions overview on your 6/21/23 agenda that will help to explain the full history of Right Choice. In doing so, I hope to demonstrate the intention of the original steering committee, was to provide a default electricity product that has fewer greenhouse gases than PG&E, and that the agency's joint power agreement codifies that requirement. I've attached a previous submission to the board that describes the JPA elements that demonstrates the agency's obligation to beat PG&E on greenhouse gases. Item 20 fails to mention this early history of Right Choice, which it accurately reported would illustrate the basis for my claim. Item 20, staff report states, Bright Choice history. In October 2018, the board adopted a 2018 calendar year emissions factor of 142 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent per megawatt hour for Bright Choice Energy product, a product approved in 2018 that was established to provide a choice for consumers, for customers, for electricity at a lower price than PG&E's as a comparable renewable product. At a previous board meeting on February 7, 2018, Mr. Chatson recommended a power mix for Bright Choice that made up of 35% renewable and 35% carbon-free for a total of 70% carbon-free electricity. I pointed out to the board that PG&E had just announced that its electricity was almost 80% carbon-free. Board member Call from Oakland, who had been a member of the pre-EBCE steering committee, modified the staff proposal to increase the carbon-free content of Bright Choice to 85%, 38% renewable and 47% carbon-free equals 85% carbon-free. We are at time, would you?
We need to stop.
Okay.
Everyone else got that time and then we took over. Okay, so are there any other, thank you for reading that in and for bringing it. Are there any other staff announcements or member announcements?
Will we get a copy of that letter?
Is it in the packet?
The letter is in the CAC agenda packet for June, today's.
Okay, thank you.
It's at the very end. It's also in the board of directors agenda packet.
Okay, thanks. All right, seeing none. Oh,
Yes, 2 items, just quick questions.
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay. One, did staff ever follow up with us on the policy process to cover transportation costs for CAC members to attend our lovely mandatory meetings? I remembered a long discussion and then I don't know where it landed.
You just need to send, if you just send me a receipt of your parking or public transportation costs, they will be reimbursed.
Okay, maybe I will talk to you because it's confusing with the Clipper card, but okay.
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. And then the other part was, I think there was a previous ask. Curious if there's a legislative budget update from EDC staff on any of the relevant bills that are still moving forward or like amendments that would impact EDC.
There was a marketing, regulatory and legislative committee meeting last Friday. Was it just Friday?
Right.
And so that those presentation materials should be posted.
Wonderful. Thank you.
As well as a video. Oh, and yeah, it didn't have a quorum, but we still have the meeting. The materials are still there.
Okay.
For now.
so yeah, the board wasn't able to make quorum. So no decisions were made, but items were still read and that's still recorded, right?
The materials are posted on the presentation materials are posted on the website. The recordings have been posted.
Oh, great. Thank you.
It's all information items.
Yep. All right, so with that, thank you for everyone who makes the efforts to be here and for posting your locations online and at your physical location. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Tuesday, July 17th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Is that also? So it's.
Okay, is that something that?
Yes, I think that it just got, because this month was Tuesday. So Monday at 6 p.m. here. That's the latest.
Here's my card.
No, it won't be here. No, here.
The gate open.
Thank you.
Yeah, my friend, like, my friend